Hello, I'm Van Lansing, Chief Medical Officer at HelpMeSee, and I welcome you to IN5, a forum for conversations focused on cataract surgical simulation-based training and the fight to end cataract blindness for more than 100 million people around the world. Today, I'm here with my guest and good friend, Dr. Hannah Faal. Dr. Hannah Faal, one of the most brilliant minds because she's been behind the concept of Vision 2020 and some of the most recent publications at Lancet Global, and needless to say, the various resolutions that have come out of WHO regarding prevention of blindness. She's also an adjunct professor, consultant, and advisor, international eye health expert, University of Calabar and Teaching Hospital, chairperson of the board of Africa Vision Research Institute. What do you think were the most important achievements that Vision 2020 had during its 20-odd years of existence? But more importantly, what was it able to achieve in Africa?
The most important impact, I think, that Vision 2020 had was bringing together the World Health Organization and the International Agency for the Prevention of Blindness together to launch a global program and a determination to eliminate avoidable blindness. The power of that was to influence the ministries of health, especially in the lower and middle income countries. And it wasn't just a policy change or an advocacy process. It put together a package of strategies that could be implemented at district level, at national level, for a million population, addressing all the systems building blocks, the service delivery, the human resource development, the technology, in a simplified way that most countries could absorb. I think that was the major thing, a uniform arrow to address elimination of blindness. In Africa, what it did achieve was that the Vision 2020 program also had a series of workshops in almost every country for advocacy to launch the program in each country and to also bring in the professionals, not just ophthalmologists, but other members of the eye care team to own what would happen in each district. Some countries went ahead more than others. The last part of it, as Kayode would also support, is that the Vision 2020 program was accepted by even regional health organizations in Africa. The West Africa Health Organization had prevention of blindness for the first time as one of its 9 programs and participated fully in rolling it out in many of the countries. So at the government level, at national level, at district level, at the professional associations level, Vision 20.
Okay, Hannah, thank you. We lost you there a little bit, but because there's a local recording, we'll pick that up, so no problem. I think the obvious follow-up question is, in this last 9 months, 8 months really, there's been significant achievements both in publications and resolutions. You're obviously part of the group that has developed the evidence that is there through the Lancet Global publications. Needless to say, in driving the new targets that WHO has set up. And as we were saying, WHO came out with these resolutions, or really one resolution, putting forward uncorrected refractive errors and, very importantly, cataract, setting targets both for an increase in the numbers and at the level that we would like people to be able to have that surgery and the results of that surgery. And now the first ever United Nations resolution pushed through IAPB. So how do you see the possibility, or actually more than the possibility, what is the impact of these resolutions and these publications to move forward the agenda of prevention of blindness worldwide, but again, more importantly, in Africa?
I see a tripod. Before now, resolutions had been passed by WHO at global level and even at regional level. But for the first time, as it says, the first ever UN resolution was passed. And I think what that achieves is that it takes eye health out of the health box and takes it into the development paradigm, takes it into the sustainable development goals, takes it beyond health into development, into technology, into the commercial determinants of health. So it takes the ownership and makes it as wide as it could possibly be, because there is no way that only eye health or health could achieve the elimination of avoidable blindness globally. So it's that openness and transparency and sharing. I think that has been the change in the last few months. And the work now falls on the eye care community to let go and share out, and for the other development partners to accept that eye health is not just an health issue, it is a development issue, it's a human rights issue, it's a climate change issue.
I think you hit the nail in the head, Hannah, because it's changing that paradigm mindset that hey, it's just a matter of health. Yeah, it's a nice thing to say that, like Vision 2020, it's a right to sight. Yes, it's a right, and it's now we know that it impacts at least, depending how you look at it, 5 to 8 of the Sustainable Development Goals, and that's how we have to think of it in the future. Which brings me then, as you very well said, the different actors. How can we better establish partnerships for training, for service delivery, for sustainability between universities, industry, government, NGOs, etc.? Because it's easier to be said than done, and you have ample experience in all those sectors, even today. So, how do you see envisioning that, bringing people together to be able to tackle this in that light?
I think much of the work will probably depend on the eye care community. My feeling and reading over time is that other partners, other stakeholders are ready to welcome, but they don't quite understand or see how they can help. So if we take cataracts, for example, the technology for delivering the surgery is developed by industry and manufacturers. So if there's any way of the eye care people working hand in hand and at par, like you are doing in HelpMeSee, it will hasten the process of having cataract surgery. Or if industry comes to understand that if their equipment cannot be repaired or are too expensive or cannot be used in places where there is no electricity, if they come to understand that and own the process of saying so many million people in the world have no business being blind, if they accept that as well, then we can work with technology. The same goes for pharma, the big pharmaceutical companies. If we also look at it in terms of commercial, non-commercial, and actually thinking of people at the end of the road and making technology or manufacturing or whatever to match the needs of people, then we would win the race. So I'm just using big pharma and technology, but every other aspect can be viewed in the same way. And even training can be viewed in the same way. Yes.
Thank you, Hannah. I think that obviously we need to generate that evidence for the industry, for companies, for universities, for governments, because it's easier to, once you have the evidence, to be able to support or garnish the endorsement of these. And it can be, okay, cataract surgery brings back people into the productive life. It impacts the family economy. Uh, why do we need to have cataract surgery at a better quality level? Does simulation-based training have a role or not? Which we know it does. I'm just being here putting examples of evidence that we can generate. How do you see, particularly the eye care industry, the providers, the universities, helping develop that evidence that we will need in the future to convince key opinion leaders and decision makers to invest in eye health with the light of strategic development goals here?
Well, I think that was why I was very comfortable being the last author on the Lancet Commission, because it was mostly about getting the evidence, how we get the evidence, what evidence is currently available, what methods we can use to get the evidence. And the home of researchers or the academics today are the universities. So to me, it's a given that going forward, getting evidence for any arguments we make or any advocacy that we're going forward with, it has to be with the universities. But having said that, there are issues with research that we would need to deal with, which is issues of equity, issues of authorship, issues of where do we raise the research questions, whether the people, the patients, the population are involved. A 360-degree review of how research is being done, how it's being funded, where it's being carried out, and how it's being published. The point up to now, it's the high impact journals that are used, but I'm sure that with time and the way that the world is going in terms of equity, there will be other ways of looking at research and measuring research. So it's a new and an open field. In fact, with the patient-centeredness that is the integral part of the new WHO thing, the opinion of the patients, the behavior change of the patient is extremely important as we move forward. So implementation research and social behavior change research are going to be as important as bench research or bedside research.
Sure. Thank you very much, Hannah, because it's very important that we do develop that evidence. And although some of that evidence has already been out there, obviously, quality of cataract surgery, particularly, which is our main area of interest for obvious reasons, and how people need this and how it can impact this economy. If there's already that evidence and we need to generate more, why has cataract surgery been lagging in Africa? It's been lagging in many places in the world, including here in Mexico, where I'm based in, but why specifically in your experience in Africa, it's taking a long time to pick up and for different entities to make it a priority?
I think cataract blindness is linked to poverty. And in many parts of Africa, the cost of the surgery itself is a major deterrent. The centers at which the surgery is done is not dictated by where the need for the surgery is, but by where it is convenient to have the ophthalmologists or to have the technology. So there is a mismatch between the need and the provision of surgery. Two, the quality of outcome has not been as good as it has been in the West. So anything that can improve the quality of outcome will increase the numbers of surgery. The last part of it is that we need to do more with the population and with the patients themselves for them to increase the demand, to increase their demand for surgery and not to accept it as part of aging. Or they can manage with visual acuity of 618. The coping mechanisms. It's just to share, work more with the populations, work more with the people to demand not just the numbers, but the quality of outcome. So bring them more into what we are doing. I think that plus the costs. Right now, we need the evidence to show that you can provide the surgery at affordable costs to even the poor rest populations of sub-Saharan Africa. And I have to quote a practical example here in my own career in the Gambia. When I got there, it was just me as an ophthalmologist in a population of about 800,000 people. And people had to travel 400 kilometers to come and have surgery done. But the design of a comprehensive program in which no one needed to travel more than 30 kilometers to have surgery done at centers where the quality was ensured, the supervision was ensured, and I used non-physician cataract surgeons. I made the most of what was available on ground, be it cataract surgeon or nurse or community volunteer or whoever. It's getting that paradigm shift within countries and within professions to accept to make the most of what we have in Africa and not try to copy what exists and so expensive in the Western countries.
I think you make an excellent point, which are the constraints and difficulties of training eye doctors in the Africa context, really everywhere, but Africa, we're focusing on Africa right now, and including cataract surgeons, which we know that for obvious reasons, they are an acceptable and desirable solution in some instances. What are those constraints that you see, that particularly in training people with M6, because we know that fake was something that everyone wants to do because they see it as the modern Western style. But what are those constraints and how can we address them?
The professions can be a plus and they can be also a stumbling block. Now, as WHO moves into competency-based training, I'm just dreaming here. As we move into competency-based training and long-distance training and simulation type training, where much of the knowledge and even skills can be done long distance, can be done not on patients, but by simulation. So the whole method of training is changing and will change and will need to change. If we accept that and design that and pilot it in a few countries and make sure it works, we should be able to transmit that down the line. It's not if. I think the train of training has already left the station. The method of acquiring knowledge and skills has already left the station, and we need to make the most, to my mind, the most of it.
I think you're absolutely correct, because traditional methods of training and the way that adults learn is significantly different. Sometimes we just think like we're little children and learning and keep on learning it the same way now. I think that if we can bring simulation-based training to the forefront of training adult learning concepts, this is going to change. What will it take for Africa training centers to adopt simulation-based training and adult training concepts?
You see, when we say Africa, sub-Saharan Africa is 54 countries. It's a huge geographical area. It's a huge, and 3 linguistic groups with 3 different cultures. So to my mind, it's first to understand that diversity. Second is to look at where you have had success stories, where you've had things working. That means those are your low-hanging fruits. Those are the kind of places that you want to go to. And the third is that you need to approach it from both ends. Approach it from a government end. There are some governments that are open to new ideas, to new way of doing things, and then work at it from the bottom as well, which is the professions. To me, if you win the professions, you won you won the major part of the battle. So if I summarize it again, don't think of Africa as one. Think of it in its diversity. Look at where you have your low-hanging fruits. Look at the governments that are progressive and are willing to listen and experiment with the future, because that's what the simulation is. Look at those places and, in a way, get the evidence of where things can work and go for those places.
I think you're absolutely correct. Once again, Hannah, as could be expected, because it happens everywhere. When I'm here in Latin America, and when we say in Latin America, where in Latin America? No, that we might speak some mostly similar languages, unlike in Africa, where you have three distinct linguistic groups. The realities of training, service delivery, geographical accidents, etc., are there. But if we just think of simulation-based training, remote training, what would be the unifying concepts over and above what you just said, that yes, governments that are sympathetic, but we need to train, we need to look for training centers and being able to bring the patients. So what are those issues that you would think would be a unifying series of concepts that we could put into place, regardless of wherever you happen to be in Africa or anywhere else in the world, for that matter?
Simulation training, it might be new. It's thought of as a new way of training, but it's being used even in the colleges themselves. The simulation training has been used. And when I listen to many people speak about it, their only but, as far as it goes, is that the cost of the technology of setting it up is high. So if you can get the one message through, that of the cost effectiveness of simulation training, the feasibility of simulation training would be a common thing that would help you sell it across Africa or anywhere else for that matter. Again, the evidence alongside with that, you mentioned how quickly it takes to train, what the quality of outcome is. But for me, I'm very patient-centered. What difference does simulation training do to the patient-centeredness approach?
Terrific. No, I think it's once again, you're absolutely correct, because it means quality of training, better standards, reducing time of training, and what you said, affordability. It's very easy to say, well, there's the simulator training, but if I have to pay for someone to fly to a training center in Madagascar, where we're thinking of working, and I'm in South Africa or in Congo, who's going to afford to pay for that? And then not only that, but setting you up. And I would like to close this session asking you that, how can we mobilize the resources and the idea that people, it's not that they're spending in training or in quality control, but that it's an investment, and that the return will be, how can we mobilize all the different stakeholders for this purpose?
And I think it comes right back to the beginning of our conversation of diversifying the stakeholders. And I would go for industry. I would go for industry to make the case to them to say, if they either lower the costs or lease the machinery or whatever method you can use in business terms for them to see that there's a commercial aspect to simulation training. If you do it, the numbers of people who will then have to buy the cataract instruments or the operating microscopes or whatever else goes into care of patients, if industry and technology as partners see that there's something in it for them, they may be the people that can invest in it. I mean, I'm speaking as a non-business person, but I feel that they are probably the ones to go for in this situation, because the cost of transport, people flying to one center, even leasing things, leasing the machinery, moving it from place to place, might be a way to look at how you do it, or even asking technology to work at it in terms of developing the product and making it environment low and middle income country friendly is work that needs to be done. I see it as a challenge to the technology member of the Elimination of Blindness group.
Thank you very much. I know that there's many things that are dear to you and that have been dear, and you've been at the forefront. You just mentioned one of them, low and middle income countries, the realities and the way of establishing programs. We cannot just copy and paste. It's not a Word document. But you've been also at the forefront of gender equity and financial equity. Before we close this, is there anything else that you would like to say regarding those issues that have been dear to you and that you promoted for many years? Because I think this is extremely important in this extraordinary changing environment, particularly with COVID-19 situation. Those limitations of access to services, particularly for women, but also for training. And in light of COVID-19, where moving is difficult, etc. Any closing remarks that you would like to say regarding those issues, Hannah?
Two things that are dear to me right now are to recognize that it's not a charity issue. Bring things to people, to see the power in the patients, to make any decision we make now to be patient-centered, and to know that once we have them on board, even coming for cataract surgery will become easier to shine the light on the patient-centeredness, see them as co-producers of health, that they have responsibility for their own eye health, and that they have a right to demand good outcomes. Not that they come to hospital and doctors are the people in power, to transfer the power to the patients. And in whatever way, in whatever we do and however we look at things, the last bee in my bonnet is climate change. And in whatever you do, as HelpMeSee, very much into technology, to embrace the issues on eye health and climate change and how we can mitigate, and look at all the steps, processes that we do, and make sure that we don't contribute to climate change. There are many other things, but those are my two flyers: the patient-centeredness and climate change. And lastly, I've been with HelpMeSee or Coyote, I would say. We've walked this walk together for many, many years. And I'd like to thank you for the staying power of HelpMeSee and carrying on with the innovative aspects of making the populations of the world see, because everybody has a right to see at a level that they want to see. Thank you so much, Van. It's lovely catching up with you and with our team in the HelpMeSee.
And it's been a pleasure as usual, and hopefully COVID-19 will allow us to meet in person some time in the not so distant future. But we're using technology for communication, so let's use technology for delivering better service to our patients. I think that's our goal for everyone. So thank you very much once again, Hannah. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Eye in 5. We hope you will join us next time as we continue to unite partners and like-minded individuals who are working to bring hope and the gift of restored sight to millions of people living with cataract blindness. Please be sure to subscribe on Eye in 5 on YouTube or share this podcast with your colleagues.